On the morning of June 3, 1991, a heavy stillness hung over the Shimabara Peninsula in southwestern Japan. A pale mist wrapped itself around the lower slopes of Mount Unzen, drifting silently across rice paddies and quiet fishing towns. The volcano had awakened months earlier, sending tremors and steam plumes into the sky. But that morning felt unnervingly calm. Shortly after sunrise, a narrow road near the village of Kitagawa filled with people, photographers, television crews, local officials, firemen, and a handful of the most legendary volcanologists in the world. Among them stood Katia and Maurice Krafft, the French couple whose daring footage of erupting volcanoes had captivated and terrified audiences for decades. Standing nearby was Harry Glicken, an American volcanologist from Stanford University, a man whose life had been marked forever by another volcano on the other side of the world. They had all come here for the same reason. Mount Unzen was alive again. And for scientists who dedicated their lives to understanding the violent heartbeat of the Earth, there was no force more magnetic than a volcano on the verge of eruption. What none of them could know was that within hours, the road where they stood, believed to be safe, would become the site of one of the deadliest volcanic events in modern history. But to understand why they were there and why they stayed, we must go back to the beginning. Katia and Maurice Krafft were not ordinary scientists. They were icons, pioneers in capturing the raw violence of volcanic eruptions with an intimacy no one else dared attempt. Their careers were built on the edge of lava lakes, beside rivers of molten rock, and in the shadows of ash clouds towering miles into the sky. Maurice, with his thick hair and impulsive humor, was the daredevil, the one who wanted to stand as close as possible, to feel the heat on his face, to hear the hiss of gas escaping from newly opened fissures. Katia was the meticulous one, calm, analytical, brilliant. She studied pyroclastic flows, the most lethal phenomenon volcanoes can produce. She understood them better than anyone. Together they formed a partnership that blended science and art. Their films and photographs became essential tools for evacuation campaigns around the world. Their work saved countless lives, but their obsession carried a price. Maurice once joked in an interview, "I would rather have an hour of excitement than a week of boring life." They had spent decades chasing volcanoes across the globe. Their friends and even fellow scientists wondered how long luck would stay on their side. Still, the Krafft believed that knowledge and instinct could keep them alive, and most of the time, it did. Harry Glicken's relationship with volcanic tragedy was more personal and far more haunting. In 1980, he worked alongside the U.S. Geological Survey team monitoring Mount St. Helens, a volcano showing ominous signs of activity. On the morning of May 18th, Glicken was supposed to be stationed at the Coldwater 2 observation post, but he wasn't. He had left hours earlier to attend to research obligations, asking volcanologist David A. Johnston to take his place temporarily. At 8:32 a.m., the volcano erupted laterally in an explosion so powerful it flattened entire forests and killed 57 people, Johnston among them. Harry Glicken survived because he wasn't there. It was a fact that followed him for the rest of his life. He threw himself deeper into research, specializing in the dynamics of pyroclastic flows, trying to understand the very phenomenon that had claimed his colleague. In early 1991, Harry traveled to Japan to help monitor Mount Unzen. His expertise made him invaluable. His past made his presence deeply symbolic. The reawakening of Mount Unzen. The Unzen volcanic complex, a cluster of lava domes and fissures, had a destructive history dating back centuries. The Shimabara Peninsula still carried memories of the 1792 avalanche and tsunami that killed over 15,000 people. In 1990, subtle tremors beneath the volcano signaled renewed activity. By 1991, a new lava dome had begun to form, a clear sign of internal pressure building. Japanese authorities sounded alarms. Residents were evacuated. Scientists around the world were alerted. Volcano enthusiasts and researchers flocked to the peninsula,
and among them, inevitably, were the Kraffts. Unzen was producing small but frequent pyroclastic flows caused by collapses of the lava dome. Dangerous, but typically channeled along predictable valleys. For volcanologists, this was a rare opportunity. A highly active volcano continuously generating data accessible by road. To the Kraffts, it was irresistible. To Harry Glicken, it was a natural laboratory for understanding the deadly flows he had studied for a decade. In late May 1991, Japanese authorities permitted international scientists to observe the activity from designated safe zones. The Mizunashi River Valley and its adjacent road had been untouched by previous flows. Geologists believed the topography would direct pyroclastic surges elsewhere. The assumption would prove disastrously wrong, but at the time, it made sense. Volcanic behavior often follows established channels, and for months, Unzen had behaved consistently, so when TV crews and researchers gathered along the roadside on June 3rd, they believed they were in a stable, defensible vantage point. Even the presence of families, local firemen, and journalists reinforced the sense of safety. After all, if everyone was there, it had to be safe, right? The morning of June 3rd. The day began quietly. A low haze drifted through the valley. Birds chirped along power lines. Steam rose lazily from the lava dome, illuminated by the mid-morning sun. Maurice adjusted his camera gear, joking with a French journalist. Katia stood beside him, observing the dome through binoculars. Harry took careful notes in his field book. Everything felt routine. Around them, conversations blended with the whir of camera shutters. Scientists discussed gas emissions, deformation measurements, and thermal readings. Somewhere above, the mountain breathed. No one yet realized how quickly that breath would turn into a scream. Signs of change. Just after midday, subtle changes appeared in the plume rising from the summit. Small ash bursts, a darker tint, a slightly faster rate of ascent. Katia noticed it first. Her commentary still echoes through the memories of those who survived farther down the valley. It's getting unstable. Maurice saw it too, so did Harry, but none of them panicked. They had witnessed eruptions far larger: Sakolajima, Etna, Pinatubo, Ñañigorongo. Unzen's behavior until then was vigorous but predictable. Still, unease crept through the group, but by the time the danger became clear, it was too late. The fatal assumption, the safe zone. The road where the observers stood was believed to be protected by terrain. The prevailing theory was simple: pyroclastic flows would continue to follow the familiar valleys. Not this one. But volcanoes do not honor predictions. They do not negotiate. Their behavior changes in seconds. And on June 3rd, 1991, Mount Unzen changed the rules. 2:54 p.m., the moment everything shifts. No one present realized that the collapse of a portion of the lava dome had already begun, but cameras, rolling at that exact moment, captured the instant the dome fragmented. A violent explosion sent a column of ash skyward, but beneath that vertical plume, something far more dangerous was forming. A base surge, a boiling lateral blast of ash, gas, and pulverized rock, a pyroclastic flow, the deadliest phenomenon a volcano can create. It hugged the ground, accelerating rapidly, finding its path not along the usual channels, but directly towards the safe zone. Footage from Japanese news cameras shows the exact moment realization struck. Reporters shouted, spectators stumbled backwards, tripods fell, engines started as drivers scrambled to reverse down the narrow road. Katia and Maurice raised their cameras. Harry stepped back, eyes fixed on the rushing cloud. For volcanologists, this was the ultimate nightmare, a pyroclastic flow coming directly toward them. It was too fast, too hot, too close. Traveling at over 160 kilometers per hour with temperatures around 800 degrees Celsius, the surge collapsed trees, vaporized vegetation, and engulfed everything in its path. There was no escape. No shelter, no time. The 43 people standing on or near the road, including the Kraffts, Glicken, journalists, firemen, and locals, were overtaken in less than 90 seconds. Sound vanished, sight vanished, the world turned gray, and then it was over. A silence heavier than the ash that blanketed the ground. The minutes after the blast. When the pyroclastic flow raced down Mount Unzen at 2:49 p.m. on June 3rd, 1991, the world above the Mizunashi Valley changed in the matter of seconds. The peaceful green fields, narrow roads, and clusters of observation vehicles were swallowed by a roiling mass of ash, gas, and shattered volcanic glass. As the cloud expanded outward, it erased the landscape beneath a suffocating gray blanket. Trees snapped into splinters, asphalt cracked from thermal shock, car windows imploded, metal warped. Anyone who had been standing on the hillside, anyone who had believed themselves in the safe zone, was gone. Not injured, not missing, gone. The violence of the surge allowed no possibility of survival. Temperatures inside the cloud were estimated between 500 degrees Celsius and 900 degrees Celsius, enough to ignite clothing, melt rubber, and kill almost instantly through heat shock and inhalation. Within moments, the Mizunashi Valley, a place filled with laughter, interviews, tripods, and scientific instruments just minutes earlier, fell silent. A silence so complete, so unnatural, that those who witnessed the event from farther away later described it as the quietest horror they had ever experienced. There were survivors, but only because they were not in the surge's direct path. Japanese volcanologists stationed 3 kilometers away saw the pyroclastic flow racing down slope. They watched across ridges and then, impossibly, redirect toward the observation road. They knew instantly what that meant. One scientist recalled shouting, "They're all gone, every one of them." Residents who had been evacuated to safer ground watched in shock as a billowing, boiling cloud engulfed the valley. Some fell to their knees, praying. Others screamed the names of loved ones who had remained behind to protect their homes. A local fire brigade, stationed slightly farther down the road, was thrown to the ground by the shockwave. Some of the surviving firemen ran uphill until the heat forced them back. Nothing, not training, not instinct, not courage, could take them beyond the boundary of that hellish gray wall. And as the cloud dissipated, revealing the charred remains of the observation zone, the sense of dread deepened. Everyone knew any rescue attempt was now a recovery mission. Approximately 40 minutes after the surge, once the ash cloud thinned and the temperature in the valley dropped enough for entry, a small team of rescuers climbed cautiously toward the affected zone. But what they saw was worse than anything they had imagined. Cars, fire trucks, and camera vans were overturned or burned. Trees had been stripped bare. The asphalt had bubbled in places from the heat. Bags, notebooks, and cameras were scattered across the hillside, many fused into unrecognizable lumps. The rescuers shouted names. No one answered. They advanced slowly, feeling heat rise through their boots. Some used metal poles to test the ground, which was still dangerously hot. And then they found the first body. It belonged to a Japanese firefighter, curled beside a fire engine, hands clenched as though trying to shield himself from the blast. He had died instantly. Further up the slope, they found the remains of the journalists, cameras still hanging from melted straps. A few meters away lay the French equipment of the Kraffts, but there were no signs of life. When confirmation reached the command center, a wave of grief rippled through the teams monitoring the volcano. Radio transmissions filled with choked voices. Some scientists wept openly. Japan knew the Kraffts well. The couple had filmed numerous eruptions across the country and had become beloved for their passion and generosity. And Harry Glicken, Harry was deeply respected within the international community. His second chance at life, after St. Helens, had made him almost mythical among volcanologists. Now he was gone too. The news spread across Japan within hours. Television networks broke into their regular programming. Newspapers rushed out emergency editions. The tragedy dominated headlines by evening. Then came the international reaction. When France learned that Katia and Maurice Krafft had been killed, the nation mourned as if it had lost cultural icons. They weren't simply scientists, they were storytellers, adventurers, public educators. Their films had aired on national TV for decades, inspiring generations to study geology and natural hazards. President François Mitterrand personally sent condolences. Documentary filmmakers, risk scientists, climbers, and geologists around the world expressed disbelief. Many had assumed, secretly, that the Kraffts would someday die in the field, but no one expected how sudden, how catastrophic, how absolute that moment would be. For the scientific community, the loss was devastating. 3 of the world's leading experts on volcanic hazards, Katia, Maurice, Harry, gone in a single, unanticipated event. Their deaths sent shockwaves through every discipline that dealt with risk, prediction, and emergency management. Nature had moved faster than science could react. The body recoveries. The process of recovering the dead was slow and agonizing. The heat from the pyroclastic flow lingered for hours, making large areas inaccessible. Gas pockets simmered. Ash drifted with the slightest breeze, choking rescuers. In total, 43 people were killed in the blast. Journalists from Japan, France, and the US, local firefighters, drivers and guides, photographers, and 3 volcanologists whose names would become forever linked with the tragedy. Some bodies were found inside overturned vehicles, others lying face down in the ash, still holding notebooks or cameras. Many had no burns visible, killed instantly by thermal shock or inhalation. The Kraffts were found together. Harry Glicken was discovered slightly upslope as though trying to retreat in the final seconds. The images from the recovery mission were never released publicly. Japan treated the site as sacred ground out of respect for the victims and their families. In the days that followed, volcanologists around the world worked to understand how the pyroclastic flow had reached the observation road so unexpectedly. The answer lay in the geometry of the new lava dome. The collapse that triggered the surge was lateral, not vertical. This meant the direction of the blast was not guided by old channels, but by the fresh structural weakness in the dome itself. Instead of traveling down previous paths, the surge shot sideways, over a ridge and into the Misunashi Valley, something previously considered unlikely if not impossible. The tragedy highlighted a fundamental principle. Volcanoes are not predictable. Past behavior does not guarantee future behavior, and safe zones can cease to be safe in seconds. Unzen forced the scientific community to confront the limits of modeling and hazard mapping. In the wake of the tragedy, tributes poured in. Katia and Maurice left behind over 300 hours of film, thousands of photographs, scientific publications, educational documentaries, and a body of work that transformed hazard communication forever. Many experts believe that their films were directly responsible for saving thousands of lives in 1991, just weeks before their deaths during the catastrophic eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. Their images had been used to convince reluctant residents and officials to evacuate. Maurice had once said, "I'm more afraid of people than I am of volcanoes. People refuse to believe in danger. Volcanoes don't care what you believe." Their deaths did not diminish their impact, they amplified it. Harry Glicken's passing had its own tragic symbolism. He had escaped the deadliest volcanic eruption in modern US history, only to be killed by another major pyroclastic event. His work on Mount St. Helens remains foundational. His doctoral dissertation, completed posthumously, is still cited today. Colleagues remembered him as brilliant, humble, and deeply introspective. One friend wrote, "Harry studied the very thing that killed him. In the end, he died doing what he believed in." His loss left a lasting imprint on American volcanology, a reminder of the thin line between understanding danger and standing too close to it. The Shimabara Peninsula mourned as well. The eruption sequence of Mount Unzen would continue into 1995, producing thousands of pyroclastic flows, but the June 3rd event remained the deadliest. In response, Japan implemented stricter safety protocols, re-evaluated hazard zones, and improved monitoring strategies. The Misunashi Valley became a symbol, not of scientific failure, but of nature's overwhelming power. A museum now stands in the region, honoring the victims and detailing the history of the eruption. On display are cameras, melted tripods, and recovered notebooks from the site, silent reminders of the moment when science and journalism collided with one of Earth's most violent forces. In interviews years later, colleagues and friends of the Kraffts often reflected on whether their deaths were inevitable. Some argued they pushed too close, too often. Others believed the world needed their courage to understand the risks volcanoes posed. But nearly all agree on one thing: Katia and Maurice understood the danger better than anyone and chose to face it anyway. They believed that showing people the truth, the raw, unfiltered power of erupting volcanoes, was worth the risk. And because of that belief, they changed the world of natural hazard awareness. They stood together, cameras rolling, witnessing the Earth in one of its most violent moments. Their deaths were instantaneous, but their legacy is enduring. Mount Unzen stands today as both a monument to their passion and a warning about the limits of human prediction. 43 lives ended in less than 2 minutes. 3 of the world's greatest volcanologists died doing what they loved most. Their story is tragic, but also a testament to curiosity, courage, and the relentless human desire to understand the unknown. Mount Unzen's pyroclastic flow of June 3rd, 1991 remains one of the deadliest scientific field events ever recorded. But from its ashes rose a new era of volcanic study, safety, and respect. The volcano hunters are gone. Their work lives on. Thank you for staying with us through this story. If this expedition moved you, or if you believe more people should know the truth behind these forgotten tragedies, please consider leaving a like. It helps this channel reach even more explorers like you. And if you want to continue uncovering the mysteries, disasters, and untold histories hidden around the world, make sure to subscribe and watch the next episodes here on Lost Expedition Files. Your support keeps these stories alive.